And thank you everyone so much for joining us today for Meeting Families Where They Are, a look at current court innovations. Before I really dive into this, I'm going to go ahead and introduce us. If I can get my slides, there we go, to go forward. I am joined by Judge Lindsey Martinez and Judge Morgan. Since I am already talking, I will go ahead and go first. I am Zoe Livingood. I'm a senior program manager with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. And I have had the great pleasure of working both with Judge Martinez and Judge Morgan, and they have some really great ideas and practices to share with you today. So I'm really so thankful for their time and to hear from them even more. Um, I also wanted to note if you'd like to go ahead and say who you are, since we don't get to see each other's faces in this webinar format. I love to hear from you directly in the chat about who you are, where you're from, and any of the questions or anything that you may have along the way so that we'll get there. So we'll get to them before we're finished. But without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to Judge Martinez.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm excited to have such a big group, especially post-holiday. Appreciate everybody getting back to it and joining us today. So I am a judge in Orange County, California. I recently changed assignment, so I'm still a designated juvenile court judge, but now am serving in the civil panel and kind of fill in on the juvenile panel. But I did spend 3 years on the juvenile panel and did that in both juvenile dependency, so child welfare, and juvenile justice, where I also presided over our juvenile human trafficking court. And are we going to have Judge Morgan introduce herself now?
Yes, go ahead, Judge Morgan.
Okay, yeah, my name is Lori Morgan, and I'm a judge in the Allen Superior Court Family Relations Division. I've been a judge since 2021 and been involved with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges since about that time. I hear primarily dependency cases, and that's really been the love of my life. That's something that I really enjoy doing. I love seeing the outcome of the cases that we hear, the positive outcomes of the cases that we hear, and I love helping people.
Alrighty, thank you both so much. And I'm seeing some great interaction in the chat. It looks like we have people from all over the country, which I love to see, and with different roles, those with lived experience, those from our tribal courts. So I think this is going to be a really awesome presentation today. All right, and here's our normal disclaimer here. And then we hope that you leave here today with an understanding of the importance of meeting families where they are in the child welfare system, which I'll talk a little bit more about next, and also with some real strategies that are being used in real courts with different variations here. We have, a more suburban, medium-sized child welfare system represented here, but also a very large child welfare system represented here. So we hope to give some practical tools that can be used by courts around the country. A little bit more about the importance of this topic. As you all are very aware, the families that you see in these courts come to court with very complex challenges, right? You have housing, custody disputes, depending on what your court is. You have poverty. You have all of these things commingling together that you're really trying to work through with these families. And many of these families has very little support and their own resources, right? Or, potentially they might not even be coming before you in these courts. The stakes in these cases are super high, right? They call it the civil death penalty for a reason when a case goes to TPR. I can't think of a worse thing to happen to a family than a parent having to terminate their parental rights because they can't safely parent their children. And these child welfare courts are problem-solving courts. I know they are set up in a way that can seem very adversarial, but truly at the core, they're problem-solving courts. And we really want families to succeed. So doing your best to potentially, if this is your situation, move from a very court-centered lens, what works best for us as a court. And you have your own challenges too, right? That exists too. But really moving to a family-centered environment of how can we make this process work better for families not only work better for us in our schedules. So without further ado, we're going to hear from Judge Martinez about what she's been doing in her jurisdiction, and then we'll hear from Judge Morgan.
Okay. So, as I explained in the intro, I presided over primarily a child welfare or dependency calendar, and then also presided over Orange County's specialty court. It's our juvenile human trafficking court. It's focused on children who are victims of sex trafficking. We had, at last count, around 50, 55 kids in the program who are either at severe risk or the majority, sadly, were being trafficked actively. And that's called Grace Court. My first test, shaking these holiday cobwebs off, generating resources to abolish child exploitation. I got it right. It was named by the kids when they first started it. And you can see on the previous slide, the star of the court was Cadence, our trauma dog, who, when I first started, I got a call from the presiding juvenile court judge, and they told me I was going there and what I was going to do. And they said, and by the way, Judge Martinez, are you allergic to dogs? And I was like, what? Why are you asking me that? That's such a strange, out of the blue question. And then they explained that Cadence comes every Tuesday to court, usually all day, to sit in the Grace Court, is a proud member of the Grace Court team along with her handler, and was really amazing. And I will say, on my first day, when I was observing the previous judge, Cadence just came and sat next to me the whole session. And so whatever kind of special, abilities she has, she could sense, I guess, that I was very traumatized or worried or scared or whatever it was. That was the one and only time she came and sat just by me the whole time. But in all seriousness, it is a really fun member of our court team, because not only, I would say maybe one or two kids kind of didn't like dogs or were scared, and we knew that, and we would ask, obviously, but really positive reactions to Cadence. And I don't know if you guys know this, but teenagers are really hard to engage at times. And some of these youth were very difficult to engage with at times. And when Cadence was there, they would kind of pet her and play with her. And then all of a sudden, kids that really hadn't kind of talked to us or didn't really want to talk to us that day would start, chatting and talk to us. So a really fun but important member who played a great role, continues to play a great role in our court team. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So, like I explained, this specialty court is for children who most were being actively exploited. It's combined. So in Orange County, you have dual jurisdictions. So a lot of youth who have cases on both sides of the house, so to speak. So child welfare and juvenile justice. We also had child welfare only and juvenile justice only, but I would say majority had dual jurisdiction cases at any given time. And it is truly a multidisciplinary team. We have all the attorneys, the social workers and social worker supervisors were always in court, probation officers. We had a psychologist who was a liaison to our local healthcare agency that provided mental health services, was in court, so could, actively reach out to a therapist or kind of help facilitate a referral in court. Our educational liaison also in court with us, and could real time kind of look up and say, wait, someone says they've been suspended. What's happening here? And she would real time kind of, be on the phone, literally on mute. And we could, see her in the background kind of working her magic. And our CASA, as well as CASA supervisors. At other times, we would have, this is kind of the core team, along with me. And at other times, we would have some other local community partners who are there. Sometimes, kids were involved in different programs, and we would have those people come, and along with any, parents, relatives, support people. So like I said, we had, any given time, 50 to 55 children who were in this court. Let me go to the next slide. Or is this the only Grace time? Oh, okay, so I'll keep talking about Grace Court. So, and then in this court, we started it in 2015. I can't take the credit for this innovative court, but it was set up by our former juvenile presiding judge, Maria Hernandez. Identified a need to serve this very complex, high need group. Majority female, but we did have several boys who participated, understanding that, back a ways, and I know we have many different jurisdictions, so I'm just speaking about California, but there was this recognition that children could not consent to sex, and so could not be prosecuted for prostitution, and instead that was victimization of minors. And so this court kind of grew out of that change in the law and that shift to focusing on prevention, care, assistance to this group. And we did continue to have very high need, not only the sex trafficking, which sometimes that would kind of take a back seat, if shockingly enough, to some serious substance abuse issues, as well as really serious mental health concerns. So we were constantly balancing both the trafficking aspect and recovering if they were kind of out of the life. Many would go kind of in and out at a given time, but connecting them with all of these services. So the first step usually was to connect with, we had some specialty therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, to get good medical care, make sure that these kids started getting to school, whatever form that looked like. Some credit recovery often was in the works. And so, it really takes a Herculean effort to try to help the youth and kind of pick up the pieces, and often, usually, get sober, get connected, and have a robust team around them. I will say that, so we have court every Tuesday. It's all day. Usually have about 20 kids on every Tuesday. So, there's only 50 to 55 in the program. So some kids you'd be seeing every week if they were in crisis. Some kids, if they're doing well, you'd see them maybe every 6 weeks. But I would say on average, you're bringing kids back to court. And I'm saying back to court, it could include a video, a virtual court session as well. But you'd see kids every 3 to 4 weeks. So have really good rapport with them. Often they were, very friendly with their social workers, even their probation officers. They really liked them. And their CASA, we would often allow them to have snacks in the courtroom. And so, it was usually CASA, although sometimes it was the social worker or the PO would always bring their favorite snack. It's a lot of caffeine and Takis being brought to my court. But we just wanted to make it kind of fun, if court can be fun, right? To come and just check in. And we're also, everybody in the courtroom, trauma-informed care, right? We don't need to rehash anything. We don't need to talk about anything. Kind of that it was a safe space with a caveat that if they, disclosed they were going to self-harm, hurt someone else, or admit to a crime, then, we would always kind of lay those ground rules. But, just checking in, being there, being a constant support and, asking them. When I first started, I thought, gosh, how will I know what these kids need? I'm a lawyer by training. I'm not a child psychologist. I mean, I am a mother, so I guess that, that can kind of help. But I was like, I don't have the background to do this. And our staff psychologist very helpfully told me, well, usually, Judge, the simplest thing you can do is just ask the child themselves, right? And so often we wonder, what could help motivate them or what could help, what could we do to get you to go to school more often? And we'd kind of talk about it first as a team before the youth would come in. And then they would say, well, why don't you just ask them? Well, and so they come in and we chat and say, hey, I know you haven't been to school in a little bit, is are you having trouble kind of transportation? Is there anything we can do? And, I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I mean, I think everyone who's on here, kind of as I was browsing where you're from and what you do, the reality of this work, that it's challenging and we don't always have the neat success stories, although we have some. But, I was surprised by how many times sort of a simple question asking them they would say, look, I'm really scared, at this one bus stop. Or we had one youth who was taking a bus and she said, yeah, a couple weeks ago, some guys kind of followed me and I was scared. And she hadn't told anyone that. And so the team kind of came up with a plan and got her some different transportation and figured it out and, really did solve the problem kind of immediately. Because she was saying, yeah, it made me nervous. And she said, well, it's probably nothing, but that's why I just have skipped a couple times. And so, having kind of real conversations with the youth and asking them and getting their input. And again, like I said, I'm dealing with teenagers. So the kids in this program were 12 to 21 because in California, you can have the non-minor dependents until 21. So talking to them and getting them, and I would say, I can make a decision about you, and I can offer some suggestions, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I want because it's your life. So we want to, kind of help guide you to a decision, because we want your buy-in, because we want you to succeed. So that's kind of one innovative collaborative court that Orange County has. We have several others, but that's kind of the spotlight and the one that I worked on the most. We can have the next slide. So another thing, working with Zoe and the NCJ FCJ team as a implementation site, we identified 3 areas kind of that Orange County was going to work on and improve. I was the committee head of our family time committee. And so we were really looking at the amount of time in a child welfare or dependency case that parents, when the children had to be temporarily removed from their care, how much they were visiting. Okay, so we kind of identified that as an area that we wanted to work on and something that we wanted to improve. So we had attorneys, and I'll say attorneys for parents, for minors. We had representatives from social services, We also had CASA. And as a team, we all kind of brainstormed a bit. We were kind of thinking, and as you might imagine, kind of minors council or children's council and parents council had some different ideas, and as did our child welfare agency, social services. But it was amazing, actually, that we had a lot more agreement than disagreement on kind of what were the best practices we could um, improve our visitation and ultimately help kids and reunify families whenever possible. So we brainstormed a couple sessions, and I won't say we were spinning our wheels, but we kind of were like talking about the same stuff a little bit. And so and I cannot take credit for this, one of our parents' council said, I think we should go visit all of these places that they have visitation at. So we did. So we went on all these field trips together. So the whole committee, we went to all of our local visitation centers, both at our child welfare agency. We have kind of a designated center. It's actually very nice. It's a home. So it looks just like a home, has like a fireplace, and it has, a kitchen, has some beds, actually has a place where parents can give children baths. So you have a natural, I mean, it's artificial, but supposed to mimic a natural setting, a home setting. Parents can cook meals, can do homework. There's an area outside for them to play with the kids. So it was great going because I had no idea what that visitation looked like, or physically what it would entail. I thought it was wonderful that parents would be bathing their children, cooking them meals, being able to do homework or practice sports outside. There's a nice TV. They could watch movies. They had all kinds of age appropriate toys for different age levels. And so it was great. And then we saw a couple other visitation centers that our local agency contracts with. I will say some were better than others. And that was another eye-opening experience. Also learned a lot going there. And I pride myself on kind of being up to date on the services and, the practical impact of any orders that I would make. But I was surprised by one visitation center who told me that they routinely would just kind of check the kids and the parents in, make sure, say, mom or dad was sober, for example, not always, but everybody looked safe, was good, and then they would release them for their visit in the community for 4 hours or something. Then they check back in at the end again, make sure everybody's good, everything went well, and that was a really great way that many more families could be served with kind of the check-ins because it didn't require constant supervision. So that was really unique. I did not realize that that was happening, that the agency was kind of working with the centers in this way for the sort of check-ins and check-outs on, families that they felt were appropriate for that. So I kind of spread the news about that around our panel. And then also just kind of looking at like, what does this look like? I mean, it's difficult to have 6 or 8 hours of visitation with toddlers or very young children inside in a small space. So kind of looking at that and how that would, work in a practical way. And also just talking to the centers, and they would tell us, we have a long wait list. It's really hard to get people here. And if you can, if it's safe, maybe allow the check-in and the checkout, or talk to the social workers, give them that ability to liberalize so we can have more visits. So I will say, in Orange County, we kind of, after all these visits, the last field trip we took was to our men's jail and women's jail. So there's no, at least in Orange County, there's no physical visitation. You can't like go in a room with your parent. But we checked out the areas where the parents who are incarcerated would be doing their video visits. We talked to our local jails and tried to get some additional children's books to be added to the library so that the parents, especially for very young children, it's hard to talk to an 18-month-old on FaceTime for much time at all. And so to have some children's books that they could read so they could do something kind of productive and beneficial for all during their visits. They heard a nice story about an incarcerated father who would sing to his child during his video visits. So we thought maybe some more books. Not everybody's a great singer, so give them some books. And we also visited our juvenile hall, which we do have several parents that are at juvenile hall, and juvenile hall does allow for physical visitations. They have kind of a family room where the parents can, they can hold the child and they can visit, of course, if safe and appropriate, but most instances, for nonviolent issues, they would be able to do that. So I would highly recommend doing those visits. After all those visits, we came up with a 2-page best practice manual that we distributed to everyone at court. So all of the attorneys, all of the CASA, the team, the community partners, that we want visits to occur as soon as safely possible. Best efforts for visitation even prior to an initial hearing, even if it's on FaceTime or a phone call, to have a comfort call the day of placement, to have ongoing and consistent regular family time. Again, all of this where it's safe. To engage parents about family time, to suggest 6 to 8 hours per week in person, and to allow discretion for the agency to liberalize that without court, going back to court. For children who are verbal, to have input on the time, place, and manner, and just to have include parents in natural activities. Maybe they're going to have their visit at a sports practice, or it's going to be cooking a meal or helping with homework, and to have regular progress reviews to review the visitation and the frequency, and to just continue to use the lowest level of supervision necessary to ensure safety. And again, to just encourage natural settings, schedule around the kids' schedule, to think through logistics and transportation, and not to forget about our incarcerated parents, order monthly photos of the children to be given at their compliance visits, authorize funding for FaceTime or phone calls if appropriate. We did that. Creative ideas like having the children's books available, and 1 to 2 times a month in-person visits if requested and age appropriate. There's some issues with newborns and medically fragile children that may require some vaccinations. So that's kind of a very speedy overview of all of the work we did on family time in Orange County. And we thank Zoe and her team for kind of guiding us and helping us through all of that. I'm going to turn it over to, I take it back. We also worked on relative placement, my last thing, which deserves its own entire slide. But another committee worked on relative placement. And just to stress that you've got to revisit this at every hearing, ask about relatives first, get information from parents at the initial hearing, any relatives that are there, get it in real time, get their number, get their name, give it to the social worker. I mean, literally on the record, having people give the phone number so we can give it to the social worker and set that placement review hearing. just as early as possible because it's very sad to have a relative pop up late in the game. And sometimes, well, whatever happens, can potentially be a sad situation. So always getting that early and proactively at the beginning, um, as often as possible. And so that kind of ties back, of course, to our family time because the relatives often are able to help facilitate that. All right, now I will turn it over to Judge Morgan.
Thank you. So, as I indicated when I gave my introduction, I became a judge in 2021, and that's around the time that my county became an implementation site with the National Council. And I have to tell you that my experience in being an implementation site has been transformational. It has been game-changing. I've learned so much about the importance and value of making sure that families feel seen, heard, and valued, and making sure that they have a voice in the proceedings that we are involved in. And the Enhanced Resource Guidelines is a tremendous resource, best practices that helps us guide and inform our conduct with regard to how to make sure that we are meeting families where they are. There's a quote that I love from Maya Angelou that kind of underscores for me, and I hope that it will underscore for you, the value and importance of making sure that people feel seen, heard, and valued. And I'm going to paraphrase it. I may not get it exactly right, but it goes something like this. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so it's become my mission to put at the forefront making sure that I am implementing practices, policies, and procedures that allow people to feel seen, heard, and valued. When we became an implementation site, Zoe and Cassandra Johnson did a site visit, and they looked at our courtroom facilities, they talked with our stakeholders, and they also did courtroom observation. And in the process of doing that observation, we had some cases where an interpreter was needed. We have a very large Burmese population in our community, one of the largest in the states, I must say. And as they were observing our processes, the hearings that required interpreters didn't exactly go like I would have liked for them to have gone. And I must say, I'm not proud of that fact. One of the hearings, we were not able to conduct the hearing that day because the family spoke a particular dialect that we could not easily locate an interpreter. So that hearing had to be continued. And then we had a second hearing where there were some challenges with the interpreter arriving, and the hearing started about an hour after it was supposed to start. So I confess I am not proud of that. And that was one of the recommendations from the site visit, was that that's an area for improvement for us, ensuring that we have interpreters available when needed. So I took that to heart, and we were having an interpreter issues with all of the courts in my community. I took that to heart, and we met with our court executive's office, with our stakeholders, and with the agency that provides interpreting services for us. And we decided that we need to come up with a process that would be helpful for the children and families who appear in our courts. And so now we've developed a new process that we think is helping to ensure that families feel seen, heard, and valued. And how it works is the people from our agency complete an online form in our Quest case management system that provides our court executive's office with certain information about when cases need an interpreter. It provides information about the case name, the case number, the name of the person or persons who need an interpreter, the language that they speak, whether there's any dialect that is spoken, the date and time of the hearing, as well as the location of the hearing, and the length of time that that case is going to be heard in the court. And then that form is utilized by our court executive's office. She communicates with the representative from the interpreting agency, all of that information, and they put that information into a spreadsheet of all of the hearings that are needed for a particular day. The day before each hearing, they personally go over that spreadsheet and make sure that all hearings that need interpreting services are covered. And we had a second site visit, a follow-up site visit within the last couple of months. And we had a case or two in which an interpreter was needed. And the person who was doing the site visit noted that we had had significant improvement in our court interpreter process. And it's really important, whether people speak English or not, for them to be able to meaningfully participate in the proceedings, for them to make sure that they not only understand what's going on, but they also have an opportunity to have a voice and to be heard. And so now I must say that I am proud of the process that we have come up with for our interpreters. We also, as a way of giving a family a voice, have developed dependency and permanency mediations in my community. The dependency mediations have been taking place for approximately 15 years or so. Dependency mediation is mandatory in all cases in my county. The dependency mediations occur after the preliminary protective hearing or the shelter care hearing. We call it preliminary inquiry hearing, but before the adjudication hearing. So they're scheduled to occur approximately 14 to 21 days after that first hearing. The parties are meeting in one of the conference rooms in our courthouse. As far as who's allowed to be present at the mediations, we have the parents and their attorneys. We have the agency attorney, case manager, and supervisor. We have our guardian ad litem or CASA, and we also allow the families to have support people with them, as long as the support people are respectful of the process and that they are not engaging in behavior that frustrates the mediation processes. We have 3 attorneys who are trained, who mediate our dependency mediations. Between the 3 attorneys, they have approximately 40 years of experience in dependency cases and also mediations. And that is the secret sauce to the success of our mediations, is having people who are doing the mediation trained and knowing what they're doing and understanding what dependency case law is all about. Our mediations are scheduled for an hour, and the mediators are paid $100 per hour. Initially, the mediators were paid out of a court improvement project grant. However, over time, that grant money ran out, and we've now incorporated the cost of the mediations into our court budget. As far as what are they mediating, the parties are mediating the allegations in the petition that was filed by the agency. They are also mediating the plan for services. And then those agreements or non-agreements that they have come to are reduced to writing in what we call a dependency mediation report, which is signed by all of the parties and then provided to the court at the adjudication hearing. We've had a tremendous amount of success with our dependency mediation processes. We also have permanency mediations in my community. Those permanency mediations are not mandatory, they are voluntary. They take place after a permanency hearing has been conducted, and anyone can ask for a permanency mediation. Before the permanency mediation takes place, we conduct what we call a permanency mediation case management conference. And that's where all of the parties are present in the courtroom before a judicial officer, and that judicial officer is obtaining certain information that is put into a court order that will help with the orderly running of the mediation. So we're inquiring about whether there are any no contact orders or any protective orders. We're inquiring about whether there are any other cases that are open involving that family. We're also asking whether there's a dissolution proceeding associated with that family or whether there is a paternity proceeding associated with that family. We're also including in that order what the contested issues are that would be addressed in the mediation. And the mediator has that handy when he or she is conducting the mediation. Permanency mediations are scheduled for 2 hours, and our permanency mediator is paid $100 per hour for a total of $200 for the mediations. We are currently paying for the cost of the permanency mediations out of a court improvement project grant, which I am aware will in the near future probably be phased out. But we will work to incorporate the cost of that into our court budget. With regard to mediation processes, it has been game-changing for me and my community for several reasons. Number one, it cuts down on the level of animosity that sometimes takes place in a courtroom. When we were first doing our adjudicatory hearings, sometimes the families would have just received the petition alleging that their child is a child in need of services. And in their minds, some of the allegations in the petition were construed to be inflammatory. And so when they would get in the courtroom before me for the adjudicatory hearing, they were kind of angry about what was being said in the petition. And then you have the agency. And so they were directing that towards the agency. And then the agency was kind of frustrated because in their minds, they were just simply doing their jobs in the allegations that they had in the petition. But they were often at loggerheads, and it just was a complicated process. And our adjudicatory hearings were taking 35, 45 minutes or longer because of the amount of tension that was going on. But now, because they've seen the allegations in the petition before the adjudicatory hearing and worked out agreements to the extent that they can, our adjudicatory hearings went from 35, 45 minutes to approximately 15 to 20 minutes. The dependency mediations also give everyone a seat at the table. And not only does everyone have a seat at the table, but they have an equal seat at the table. No one person is seated above everyone else. Everyone has an equal voice. And that's really hugely important. And when the parents in particular feel that they have a voice in the outcome of the litigation, you tend to have greater investment, and in turn, you tend to have greater outcomes. And so I would urge all of you who may be interested to work to institute permanency and or dependency mediations in your jurisdictions. And you don't have to do your mediations the way we do them. I'm just giving you a bit of a template, and then you can take that and run with it and implement procedures that you feel will be helpful in your respective jurisdictions as well. We work in my court very hard to develop relationships with the families who appear in our court. That gives them an opportunity to feel valued and respected. And we have a version of the one judge, one family concept that is referenced in the enhanced resource guidelines. The concepts that's referenced in the guidelines is that one judge would hear every matter pertaining to the case, whether that is the family law matter or the criminal law matter or the civil matter. One judge hears everything that's pertaining to that case. We're not able to do that in my jurisdiction. We have a version of that. Instead, every hearing after that preliminary protective hearing is assigned to a particular judicial officer who hears every matter pertaining to that case in the dependency arena, unless and until it goes to a termination proceeding, at which point a different judicial officer would be assigned to hear the case. In doing that, having one judicial officer hear the case for the time that it's involved with the court in the dependency arena, that allows for predictability. That allows for people to get to know me and me to get to know them, and for me to build relationships with the family. I can have the ability to hold people accountable because I know what took place in the last hearing that was held or the hearing that was held before that. But I also have an opportunity to support them and encourage them and to provide guidance to them. I also take pride as far as relationship building goes and making sure I've reviewed that report thoroughly And I work hard to spotlight and highlight successes for the family because it's not helpful if all they're hearing is doom and gloom. And so I'm looking to see if they're having a birthday coming up, or if a young person went from earning D's to earning C's, or if a person has been clean and sober for 30 days or a year or what have you. And when I do that, the faces of the parents and the children just light up because that positive encouragement that I'm giving them may be the only positive encouragement that they'll receive that day, that week, that month, that year. And it is absolutely priceless. It is invaluable. Next slide, please. We also have developed specialty courts in my jurisdiction or problem-solving courts. Specialty courts are innovative ways of addressing the needs of and providing services to those who are experiencing challenges in certain arenas in their lives. We have 3 specialty courts in my jurisdiction. We have a family recovery court, which serves persons who are dealing with substance use concerns. We have a family domestic violence court, which serves what we call offending parents or those who commit acts of domestic violence against others, as well as survivors of domestic violence. And as I'm aware, it's the only court in the state of Indiana, I'm from Indiana, that has such a court in the dependency arena. We also have a therapeutic treatment court that serves those who have mental health diagnoses. Each of those courts has a specialized team of experts that works with those courts to help provide guidance and instruction and recommendations on the issues that the families may be encountering. So as an example, with the Family Domestic Violence Court, we have our Center for Nonviolence, which provides advocacy services for survivors and also provides AIP, Abuse Intervention Program services, or better interventions services for offending parents. And I'm able to get unique insight and information and wisdom from those experts. Participation in our specialty courts is voluntary and not mandatory, which is key because I think you get better investment and buy-in if it's something that they're doing of their own volition as opposed to something that they were forced to do. Each week, we hold staffings for the participants in our specialty courts, and we were looking at each case individually and finding out what might need to be tweaked or adjusted, and discussing successes and discussing challenges as well. And then when the families come to court, we're able to talk with them about that and make adjustments immediately. Our specialty courts, we have 3 phases for those specialty courts. In phase 1, they are obtaining assessments to determine what their needs are, and they're coming to court on a weekly basis. Phase 1 lasts approximately 30 days for all of the specialty courts. And then in phase 2, where the participants come to court once every 2 weeks, they are then participating in the services that were recommended and the evaluations that they participated in. And they're working to obtain housing if that was an issue, and working to obtain a source of income or support for themselves and their families, as well as working to address the issues that led to their family being brought to the court's attention. Then in phase 2, participants attend court once every 3 weeks. And at that point, they're working to continue to address the issues that led to their family being brought to the court's attention, but they're also working to ensure that they are maintaining stable housing and maintaining a stable source of income and support for themselves and their families. As they're going through the process of the specialty courts, they are receiving incentives and sanctions. And the incentives kind of help keep them on track and inspire them. So in my family domestic violence court, incentives could be things such as verbal praise from the specialty court team, a round of applause, or it could be what we call care cash in my court, where we have kind of fake money that the participants receive, and they use that money to purchase items from our specialty court store. The kinds of items that they might purchase, we have gift cards to Amazon, Walmart, grocery store gift cards, gas cards. We have toys and games that they can purchase for their families. And we always tell them if there's something that they're wanting to see made available in our specialty courts, if they let us know, we'll work to purchase that item if it's not too expensive, so that they can set that as a guideline for something they want to work to purchase for their family. For exceptional performance in our specialty court, we have a fishbowl, and parties are able to draw from the fishbowl and they get extra prizes, like they might get extra care cash, they might get a gift card, or they might get a certificate to like a spa or something along those lines. As far as sanctions go, sanctions include maybe an inability to move from one level to the next, or having to repeat a service. It could also be writing a letter that tells us where they're having challenges and what they can do to improve and overcome the challenges that they're experiencing. Recently, I have found that particular mechanism to be very, very helpful, and it's really been transformational for the participants who've been asked to do that self-reflection and come up with a way or plans in which they might surmount or overcome the obstacles that they're facing. The ultimate sanction in our courts would be discharge from our specialty courts, which has not happened that often. We are finding that even if a participant is having a challenging week or challenging couple of weeks, they are still coming to court and still being present. And I think it's because of the relationship building that's going on in those specialty courts. And also they're having a feeling that we care and that we want to help them make a difference in their lives. We are also finding that there's a fair amount of crossover amongst the specialty courts. A case might come in where we initially feel that it's appropriate for the family domestic violence court, but then we discover that in addition to domestic violence issues, there might also be substance use, or there might be some mental health issues. So as a staffing team, we have to decide what is the most pressing issue and where would this participant be best served, and then we try to transition them to the court where they will receive the most benefit. But we find that we are achieving permanency a little bit sooner with our specialty courts, and we're getting great results and great outcomes. Next slide, please. We also, in my county, like to celebrate achievements of people who appear in our courts. So we have a wall of fame where we have lots of positive phrases that are up, and children who might enjoy art, we encourage them to draw a picture and to bring it to court, and we display that on the wall of fame. We also have a little bell that we purchased from Amazon for it might have cost maybe about $10 or so. And when we close a case, we allow the families to ring that bell to signify the success of being able to close their cases. When we started that process, I kind of thought, I'm not sure how this is going to go over or whether anyone's really going to enjoy doing that. But it has been a huge success. You should see the smiles on the faces of the parents when they get to ring that bell, signifying the success of closing their cases out. It's been really a wonderful and a beautiful thing. $10 of an investment that's worth, the success of a lifetime. We also have a lot of celebration days in my court, including an adoption day that we hold in November of every year. November is National Adoption Month. We spend a lot of time coming up with an amazing theme for the event, and we all dress up in accordance with that theme, and we go all out to celebrate creating forever families. And so again, I'm just thankful and grateful to the National Council for the opportunity to work with them and to learn and to grow. It has truly benefited me, and it has benefited my community and the children and families who appear in my court. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you both so much. We still have a couple of minutes. I'm going to you saw me go by a QR code. Since Zoom has the feature where when you close it, the evaluation can come up. I don't want to confuse everyone with separate codes. So don't worry if you missed it because I only had it on there for 2 seconds. But thank you so much. I think we heard just so many good things in the last hour. I will do a couple of questions here. We don't have time for a lot. And feel free to put, if you have questions, even if we won't get to them, feel free to put them in the chat and I will do my best to follow up with you afterwards. You can also send me an email here on the screen. You can see my email address. Judge Raymond would love to hear. I would love to hear more about Family DV Court. So we have a lot of interest in DV Court. Before I get to that one, though, I would like to. It was another comment from Judge Raymond. I think it was for you, Judge Martinez. Can you share what you give to families, and does it include the info on the slide? I believe that was for the family time information. Do you give any information to families about that?
So no, but that's a really good idea. So I will say give it to them verbally, but I think that probably a one-page sheet with that information would be helpful. And I will profess ignorance as to what exactly the social worker gives them. I hope that it's in line with all of that. But that is a wonderful idea to have kind of a one-page expectation on visitation and do profess my ignorance as to what they're given exactly in writing. Although I would take a lot of time at the initial hearing to explain that in detail.
Great. Another question we had briefly, and I know that you answered some of this in the chat, Judge Martinez. There were people that were interested in a family visitation center, and I don't know if you had anything else to add about starting one.
Yeah, I will just say fortunately we already had those in place. But the visitation centers are kind of a double-edged sword because really you want to have visits occurring in natural environments. And as much as some of the visitation centers mimic a natural environment, they're not. And so I would say the easiest way without starting one would be to just have a family or friend supervisor and have it in their home and or in the community and have visits that way. And that often, even though we have several visitation centers, they're overloaded. And so a lot of our visits would be occurring that way, kind of in the real world.
Yeah, sure.
So that's one way to overcome it. And then I guess just talk to your agency.
Sure. I will also note Judge Martinez mentioned in the chat, and I really appreciate that, about emphasizing keeping families together first and foremost. So you don't need family time.
I will say I don't want anyone to get the impression that, Orange County is ripping children away and then giving them lots of visits with their parents. It's the opposite. Focus on keeping everybody together, implementing some safety plans or protective orders or anything really that can be tried to keep the family together. And of course, this is only after all of that has been exhausted, do we work very hard to keep visitation going.
Yes. And I will note too, for those that had questions in the chat, we are sending out a recording of the webinar and a PDF of the slides. You'll have that. That's a great way if you have questions to get back into contact with us after you've had some time to process this. Earlier in the conversation, my colleague Fabiola put in the chat a application for our implementation sites program. If that's something you're interested in, that was not on purpose. That just happens to be something we're recruiting for right now. So if you're interested in goals such as the ones we're talking about today or other things, feel free to chat with us about that or put it in an application if you so choose. That unfortunately is all the time that we have today, but we will save the chat and get back with as many of you as possible if there are some more questions. Thank you so much, Judge Martinez and Judge Morgan. I think it's so invaluable what you've been able to provide today. And I know it's so easy to be inundated with just the normal everyday of court or your other work that you're doing. It's really hard to kind of see change. And I think being able to see it firsthand from people that have done it is really so powerful. And thank you so much for everyone who's, given an hour of their time today. I hope this was really helpful for you, and I would love it if you could take our evaluation and let us know what we did well and how we could improve. And as always, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in your communities to help children and families. Thanks everybody so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.